Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue. So hurry up and come on down. 'Cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand!
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Roundtable. And let me make this background a little bit better. I apologize, guys. Of course, it didn't actually work. But what the hell else is new with this channel? But what are we going to do with that? Hold on one second, guys. I do apologize for the inconvenience. I'm not sure why the background's not going, but who the hell cares? Everybody's here. So we got Nelson, we got Chris, and we got Hayden here, of course, at the roundtable. So we are going to go right into it, and I'm not sure why this is doing this. What the hell is wrong with me? Sorry, guys. I apologize. Oh, look at that. Look at that. All right, so that was my stupid. All right, guys. So this is what happens when you're live, and we are a little late. We're having a little discussion before the stream. So welcome back, guys. Mets are leading 3-1 against the Cubs right now. Alonso's 3-run homer is the difference at the moment. And I want to welcome everybody to the show. And we're going to go around the table really quickly before we get into our topics. We're going to start with Hayden down below me right now. So, Hayden, what's up, buddy? And how you been?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden here. Hopefully everyone is doing extremely well. Besides the Mets, really no complaints for me. I know I haven't been crazy active this week. I know the last thing I uploaded was in regards to the trade deadline, and just taking a little bit of a mental health break from the Mets, to being honest. Definitely. Oh, let's go. Pete Alonso just hit a home run.
Just hit another one.
There we go. See, I talk, and my boy comes in 2 home runs tonight. Sorry about that. I'm just watching some eliteness. But yeah, took a little bit of a mental health break just for the Mets and starting up, stuff soon. So, yeah, I just took a little bit of a break, but I'll probably be doing a stream later in the week. But yeah, Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Yeah, nothing really new. Pleasure to be here with everyone. And yeah, let's go Mets. Let's go baseball. I know times are tough right now, but yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes. And we're in it together, I guess.
Aren't we? All right, we're going to go across and say what up to Nelson. Nelson, what's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Good to be here. Like Hayden said, it's been a rough go in Mets land, but hey, we're winning today 5-1, so good to see that. Good to see Alonso heating up. I've talked to Chris about it and to several other people. To me, this rest of the season's more about just individual performances and how certain players are doing than the team itself, because the team itself is just horrible right now. But yeah, good to be here to talk about whatever there is to talk about. We're kind of just trying to pull stuff out of thin air at this point, but it'll be a good time, and I appreciate everybody watching.
All right, so we're gonna go to the last one on the round table. Chris, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
What up, guys? CP from CPNY Sports. Rob and I did the Shade Bridge. I filled in for Hayden yesterday. I'm not Mets Talk with Hayden, but it is what it is at this point. But Mets Talk with Hayden is providing a lot better content than me, and his opinions on the Mets are a lot better than mine because I like to keep optimistic, and I know I shouldn't. So he'll give you the real deal as it is. So no, but man, CPNY Sports here. Nelson and I do some great stuff on Tuesdays and Fridays with the Interstate Mets Report. We're live every Tuesday and Friday, giving you everything that you need, even in these tough and trying times. Appreciate everyone supporting. Appreciate Rob for having us here on the roundtable. Love talking Mets baseball with these gentlemen, even with the current state of this team. Saw Pete Alonso, second homer of the day, got all 5 RBIs for the Mets. I'm sure we'll get into some Pete Alonso discussion here today, like we did on the Shea Bridge show last night. So yeah, I appreciate it. Football season coming up. Already talked to Hayden and Nelson about it. Rob, I'm not sure if you're doing any football content coming up, but yeah, it's gonna be some fun times. NFL season coming up. My Giants, Hayden's Bills, Nelson's Giants. Yeah, I was debating wearing my Giants jersey on this stream, just shouting them out real quick for the content coming up. But yeah, no, I mean, like Nelson said, this is gonna be tough and trying times the next 2 months. We're in it together. We'll be here no matter what, providing you guys content, and looking forward to this episode. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So yes, I will put on my Cowboys jersey if you guys need me to. I will definitely do that. I'll probably there's been so many people that wanted me to do Cowboys content, which is crazy to me. I know it would be cool, but I don't have the time. I'm not gonna lie. I'll just hurt my Mets channel, and that's kind of like why. But yeah, you never know. I might pop up somewhere with the Cowboys channel. Who the hell knows? We'll see how that goes. But yes, guys. So thank you for tuning in, and of course, thank you for coming in and talking about this team that is trying to get one of the top six draft picks. It's clearly what they're doing, and it's going to lead to the first topic at hand, and that is the Beatty Marte news. If you haven't know what's going on, Beatty was sent down to AAA, optioned to AAA. He was just batting terrible. He's batting .216, 7 home runs, 27 RBIs. I mean, he's been up for almost the majority of the season. What is it, like 86 games? And he has a strikeout I think he has 86 strikeouts in 86 games. So it's just he's just not having it right. It's not good right now. And then it's looking like he's taking it on the field as well. And it's just mental at this point because he is talented. And I thought he was going to be a better pure hitter than anybody the Mets brought up. Even though Alvarez has shown the power, I thought Beatty was going to be a better overall hitter just because he looked so good in spring. Me and Hayden were there. And we'll talk about the guys that they brought up to replace these guys. But because we also saw them in spring, and we talked about that Almonte guy a lot, Hayden, in spring, the way he was playing. And yeah, it's kind of like with Beatty. I hope it's just mental because he did come out with a comment that was very worrisome. And I think that's another big reason why the Mets actually did what they did. Because again, when it becomes a mental game, that's when you got to worry. And, we talked about that with Alonso being a leader. And, we got 2 home runs tonight. When things go well, he seems like the best leader possible. And, sometimes confidence is all that a player needs. And we always talk about it. And I think that's what Beatty needs. And I think it was a smart move that they sent Beatty down. I know we all talked about it in the group chat a little bit. But I'm going to start with Hayden here about Beatty. And we'll get to the Marte news after we go around the table. Yeah, with Beatty, do you agree with the Mets' decision? Because he wasn't hitting major league pitching. His confidence clearly shot. He was getting worse on defense. So do you think it was smart to option him down to AAA, even though the season's basically over?
Yeah, I mean, I think really at this point, considering what the Mets season is, I don't really think it makes really – I don't want to say it doesn't make much of a difference, but, I mean, what do you lose versus what do you gain? The Mets are pretty much out of it. It's not like they're competing. Brett Beatty, yeah, I mean, he had probably a solid week, really at most, where he was actually looking really hot. And I want to say that was like that week in May. Nice power surge there. But Beatty offensively, yeah, definitely saw, some concerns. The ground ball percentage, the inability to pull the ball is just probably the 2 biggest things there. When he got called up, when he started the season on the MLB roster, he really wasn't chasing a lot. And now you've been noticing he's been chasing outside the zone more. The strikeouts have gone up. And yeah, he really pretty much looks lost. Defensively, I think defensively was always kind of the thing. I mean, yeah, he looks pretty bad now defensively, probably worse than what many people expected. So yeah, I mean, right now I think Beatty going down to the minor leagues. I guess the benefit of it could be that he can get hot. I guess mentally it could help him out. The good performance results. I mean, if you're an athlete, you're playing well, you're going to feel good about yourself. So, I mean, maybe that's one of the few benefits. Really, in regards to it, I think defensively, yeah, third base for him was kind of shaky. Definitely costed a decent amount of games. That Philly game definitely stood out when he couldn't turn a double play. But yeah, right now I think it was a move that this Mets front office thought was the best. I mean, really, when it comes to the baby Mets, as people like to call them, I don't know what this team wants to do with them. I mean, besides Francisco Alvarez, what do they want to do with Vientos? What do they want to do with Beatty? What do they want to do with Mauricio, a guy who Ronnie Mauricio, no one's talking about. He's been struggling a little bit in AAA. Strikeouts have gone up. And so I don't really know what the future, what they're trying to do. But when it comes down to Brett Beatty, really, it's 50-50. I mean, I think 50% would be satisfied. 50% are like, well, the season's over. What difference does it make? But let him continue to work. Let him continue to develop. I mean, he has a nice, smooth swing. Is he gonna, like I said, the ground ball rate, the inability to pull the ball, those are the two big kind of concerns, Michael Conforto. But we're gonna have to see how that goes out.
You're on mute, Rob.
Muted.
I usually don't press the mute button. I apologize. Nelson, we're gonna go to you. What do you think about the Beatty situation? Do you agree with it? Do you think it's a smart move, knowing that how Beatty's been? And it seems like he's taking it even more on the field now. We know he wasn't a great defensive player, but it just looks like he's lost in all aspects of the game right now, Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt, I suppose. With Beatty, my thought was he would come around eventually, whether it be this year or next year. I don't like giving up on guys based on a year of play, a little over a year. I mean, technically last year he didn't play very much. But at the same time, I have the quote here. He said, "You're under a microscope up here, so you have to be engaged from pitch one to the end of the game. That is something I got to work on and something I got to learn. So I'm going to do my best at it." That concerns me. Like, mechanical adjustments at the plate, like that can be worked on, fixed rather easily. When you're mentally kind of checked out, it sounds like from that quote, like that scares me. Like mental things in the game of baseball, like that can linger, that can last for a while. Sometimes you never get over the mental aspect, and that makes me nervous. I'm not saying I'm giving up on him. I'm not saying he's done. I think going to the minors and maybe not having to focus so much, maybe that is a help. Maybe he'll just get going, just have fun hitting the ball. And I mean, it seems like everybody rakes in the minors, so it's like that AAA Syracuse team. It doesn't matter who's hitting; they seem to put up numbers. So maybe that'll get him going. I don't know whether we'll see him back up or not. Maybe they decide to leave him down the rest of the season. Who knows? But yeah, it concerns me a little bit because, I mean, he was a pretty highly regarded, but it's not like he was ever like a top prospect. So it's not like he's a sure thing anyways. I don't know. It scares me a little. Like Hayden said, Vientos, it doesn't, I mean, again, I don't like giving up on guys early, but he doesn't look like he's it. Alvarez has got to carry it for these kids right now, and then we'll see if they give Mauricio a shot if he has it. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely, Nelson. And yeah, and you know what? When I saw that quote, the first thing I thought of was a Chris Bassett quote before Game 3 last year in the Padres series. Sounded very similar. The mental aspect, the pressure, all that stuff was. I mean, if you look back, just Google the Chris Bassett quote before Game 3. He said basically the same thing, just a little bit of change of words. He basically said the same thing. And, I felt like Bassett checked out and basically mentally effed himself before that game. And I think Beatty I think it's all mental right now because it looks like he does have the talent, but we'll see. Again, there's a lot of busts all around baseball. It always happens. Everybody talks about Ellie De La Cruz. Look, 2 years ago, he wasn't in the Reds' top 30 prospects. So you just never know, right? Jeff McNeil, Jacob deGrom, these guys weren't top prospects. And, they're major league guys that, got next contracts besides their rookie deal, for their first couple of years, as their first contracts, in Major League Baseball. So it's something to look at. And Chris, you brought up a good point I saw in the chat about August 19th and Ronnie Mauricio. Exactly what I was going to say before everybody got around to it, but you can elaborate more on that when it comes to Beatty and why they didn't bring him up yet. So talk about Beatty and then bring up that great point about Mauricio.
Yeah, exactly. Beatty is a really tough player, I guess, to analyze for me. He's done everything he could possibly do in the minor league farm system, all the way from when he got drafted to when he got called up. If you look at his minor league stats across the board, I mean, they've been all great. He hasn't hit lower than 270 at any point in his minor league career. And, aside that one season that he hit 272, his lowest batting average before that or outside of that was 292. So absolutely raking in the minors. But like you said, everybody doesn't pan out in the major leagues. If you played baseball before, in Beatty's comments directly what he said, keeping your head in the game every single pitch is really, really hard to do. You can get very lost in your own mental state and zone out very easily, especially if you're playing in front of however many fans. And I honestly feel for him. It's a really big adjustment playing in front of tens of thousands of fans compared to your average minor league turnout and whatever that is. So it's a huge adjustment in terms of, just echoing what Nelson said. I agree. I'm not going to judge Beatty and write him off after one season, that he's done poorly in. He's obviously hitting 216. His defense isn't great by any means at all. Not only his fielding, but his arm looks a little shaky. What is it, like 620 OPS, something like that this season as well in 2023 in the majors. So it is what it is with Beatty. I know I brought up that Arenado conversation about Beatty for Arenado swap, and it just seems fitting now at that point. And I don't want to revisit that, but it's just something to think about because when you look at the plethora of infielders that the Mets now have in the minor league farm system, bringing over Luis Angel, obviously still having Ronnie Mauricio, who I'm going to touch on here in a second, and obviously everybody else in the pipeline like Jet Williams, etc. It makes Brett Beatty a little bit more expendable. And you can say, oh, well, let's move Beatty to the outfield, and that'll just solve his defensive problems because he can be serviceable in the outfield. Well, guess what? You also have 3 major league or almost major league ready outfielders. I won't say Alex Ramirez is major league ready, but Ryan Clifford and Drew Gilbert coming up in the system too to go alongside Alex Ramirez. So the outfield spots may be limited as well. So we'll see if Brett Beatty's here long term. I'm not going to say that they're trading him. I'm not saying that by any means. Don't get my words twisted. I'm just saying that it makes him a little bit, an ounce more expendable. But as it pertains to Ronnie Mauricio, August 19th, like you said, is the service time manipulation day to watch out for. Mauricio can maintain everyone thinks about service time manipulation in the beginning of the season, which that can definitely happen as well, holding players in the minor leagues, before a certain point to maintain their rookie status. I think the Mets were thinking about doing that with Pete Alonso. I forget if they ended up doing that with him or not. But anyways.
They wanted to, but 2019, it was too much pressure before.
Exactly. And they called them up beforehand. Exactly. Okay, so everyone talks about the beginning of the season service time manipulation, but Nelson and I have been talking about it. August 19th is the date at the end of the season to maintain rookie status as well. We saw with Brett Beatty last season as well when he got called up in late August. So Mauricio would be a rookie technically next year if they called him up post August 19th. So that is really the date in terms of if you're on Ronnie Mauricio watch to be looking out for as it pertains to a certain call-up. Now, listen, with Brett Beatty going down, I don't know if this is going to be just a couple-week thing to get his mental status right, whatever, then bring him back up. or if maybe this gives Ronnie Mauricio a viable shot now to become the Mets third baseman as a trial run for the rest of 2023. So we'll see what happens there. Both options are definitely plausible. In my humble opinion, I would love to see Ronnie Mauricio and have that trial run. But at the end, playing devil's advocate there, if he comes up and struggles mightily, his stock plummets just like Vientos's did. So it's
Absolutely.
sort of a game that the Mets are, I guess, playing by ear, and we'll see how they really view Ronnie Mauricio and his status in the future with the Mets here shortly, come August 19th. But we all talked about if he's not brought up to end the season at some point, he's probably going to be the first one to go in the offseason just because he doesn't really have a true position for the Mets. And do you really want to move forward with him as an everyday DH? The Pete Alonso extension, like we talked about, Kevin Parada coming up can play first base. Is Pete Alonso going to move over to DH, right? Whether he wants to or not. So these are all questions that are intermingling, and they have direct relation with one another that you have to think about if you're the New York Mets, and if you're a New York Mets fan, sitting at home watching these videos or whatnot. These are all things to sort of think about at the same time. So that's my thoughts on it. I still believe in Beatty. Obviously, who knows? Maybe come next season, they tell him, we want to see a little bit more power out of you. I don't know if that's the best thing everybody wants to hear. Everybody talks about short line drive swings with these lefties, and that's what Brett Beatty was an example of coming up from the minor leagues. But if you elongate his swing, you'll get more strikeouts. Obviously, the rest is sort of a question mark at that point too. So we'll see. Michael Conforto tried to do it. He came up being a line drive hitter with a little bit more pop than Brett Beatty did coming up. But when he started to get that long swing, trying to hit 30-plus home runs every year, you saw how Michael Conforto ended up being. And it's just kind of a give or take situation. So that's my take on Brett Beatty. It's hard from baseball perspective. I just mentally, we just don't know if he's ready yet to be that full-time third baseman like we all thought that he was going to be. And it sucks because he was one of the guys that we all thought could help this team immediately. But we'll see moving forward if he's even going to be sort of thought of as part of the plans, because the Mets front office could go and just say, hey, listen, we saw what we needed to see. Hopefully we can convince somebody that he still has what it takes, but we'll try to look for a trade package with him. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not advocating for it to happen, but we'll see what happens. So that's my thoughts on Brett Beatty, man, honestly.
Absolutely. And I do think when you send somebody down, you can't bring them back up for 10 days unless there's an injury, and then you can you can replace them on the roster with that. If there's an injury, then you can bring them back. So he's going to be down for 10 days. So what is that? The 17th. That's 2 days before, the date of August 19th. And that's going to be very interesting to see what the Mets do on August 19th. And I think they're not going to bring up Beatty until probably September. Probably give him a full month to get ready to see what he can do. And yeah, like you said, why not? This is why you have a bunch of middle infielders and infielders in general. Why you accumulate them? Because they can easily go to second, they can easily go to third whenever you might need that positional change, because of the fact all these guys are not going to work out, and all these guys are not going to make the major league club. Even if they're all viable options for the major league level, they're not all going to be on this roster. All right. You're still going to have Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, and Nimmo. That's 4 spots right there that are not going to be taken up. There's other positions there, catcher, obviously, Alvarez is there as well. So there's not a lot of positions to fill. And when you got to fill those other positions, what are you going to do with the other guys that you have on in your depth area? You're probably going to trade them. So you just have to make the right decision. And hopefully they do. We'll see. And at the moment, Beatty, he had every opportunity to do what he had to do this year. After they traded Escobar, they gave Beatty the job. And I'm always a stickler for – I'm the type of person that I believe that you better earn it before you just give him the job, because I think that's a huge problem around Major League Baseball. There's all this, because we haven't seen him at the big league level, we always think it's going to be better than what you have. The whole aspect of Alvarez and Beatty and Vientos, all those guys, everybody wanted them up because of the quote-unquote power. And, let's just throw the veterans away when the veterans are the ones who know how to come out of slumps, who know how to be mentally ready and mentally prepared for situations like the Escobars of the world and like the Cannons, like the Phams, guys like that. it's not a coincidence that Escobar in the biggest month of the year last year was one of the hottest hitters in the Mets lineup, right? Sometimes you need that veteran to pick the team up, and you can't just rely on the rookies and expect them to know how to do that yet. And I think that's where you just have to see the mental aspect of it, where I think that's where Beatty's thing is, because we see the talent. It's just the mental aspect. I think that has to get worked out. And again, confidence, again, 80% mental, 20% physical. I mean, that couldn't be any more true. You know, you can have all the talent in the world, but if your head's not right, you're probably not going to be a good player no matter what sport it is. So we know about the Marte news. If you haven't heard, the groin strain, putting him back on the IL. And is anybody shocked by this at all? There was something wrong with Marte from day one. I mean, he had a good first week and a half of the season, and ever since like the second week of April, he's never been the same player. And I always felt like I don't see a guy that has a really good year last year, basically the numbers he had his entire career last year, and completely fallen off basically, you know, the boat, basically, the way he just completely fell off the map. You don't see that often, and not when you have a really good year like that. And I think he was hurt the entire year and tried to play through it. And, you know, I'm going to start with you, Nelson, about this. I mean, are you shocked about the Marte news? Because I felt like he's been injured all year.
No, I'm not shocked at all. We've been talking about it for months that the dude looked injured. It's a tough to watch, man, because at times he's out there just giving up on baseballs, and like you try to remind yourself, okay, he's probably hurt, but at the same time, it just looks so bad because he's just like, these balls they're catchable, and he's pulling up on them. He's like just looking disinterested, and if you're in that much pain, I get it. It's got to be hard, but man, it's been tough to watch. He was the catalyst for the offense for most of last year. He made a big difference, and you can point to that as one of the main reasons. I mean, it's obviously not the only one, but one of the main reasons this team struggled this year is we didn't have that catalyst in the two-hole that we had last year pretty much all year up until he got hurt in September. And, I mean, it does coincide. The team went on a downslide in September after he got hurt.
Yep.
It continued this year as he's been hurt. So, obviously, it's not all him, but it didn't help. And you got to hope he can – I mean, he's signed for 2 more years. So, we got to hope that he's healthy next year. And I would just let him chill the rest of the year, to be honest. I don't need to see him back. What's the point? It's not going to help anybody. Just let him sit it out. Let him try to get healthy. Hopefully by next year he's feeling good and he's back to his old self, because we can't have a black hole in right field, and they're going to play him because of that money. And I mean, we're already eating so much money. I mean, it's Steve, so who knows? Maybe he'd eat the contract to get rid of him, but I don't know, man. We're going to need Marte for next year, and if he's this version of Marte, then that's already a bad start for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. I got a text. Yeah, absolutely. With that, I just felt like, you know, like he was always. It felt like he was always scared to give that extra burst to get to a ball, and I think he felt like he was going to really injure himself. And again, when you got that in your head, it's hard to play the game 100%. You know, even when he went back on the ball the other day and made a nice catch against the fence the other day, and it seemed like that probably didn't feel too good either. So, yeah, Nelson, I agree with you. Chris, so, yeah, Marte, what do you think, buddy?
Honestly, I agree with everything Nelson said. Shut him down for the rest of 2023. There's no use to bring him back. If and only if, right, you can use him at the beginning of 2024, but if he starts the season off well and he maintains that kind of status and gets back to the Marte that we know, if Steve Cohen's willing, he's owed just over $20 million the next 2 years. Yeah. If he gets back to the Marte that we know, you sell high on him next trade deadline. Bring up a guy like Gilbert from AA. Hopefully he'll be progressed even past AA at that point. Because listen, I'm telling you right now, I don't know Marte should not be a part of this team moving forward long term, especially not through that 4-year contract. Now, I know maybe it's not feasible to go ahead and do what the Mets did at this trade deadline next year, but Marte is a guy that I would want. Marte and McNeil, if you can swing deals for those guys, and I will piggyback on what Nelson said because I know Nelson's on the full trade McNeil train. Those are the only two guys at this point in this juncture of the season, and Robbie too. If you can swing deals like you did for like a Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, eat some of that money that they're owed, sell high on them. You can't sell on McNeil and Marte right now, given the 2023 that they've had so far. But if they come out guns blazing in 2024, you have reinforcements now, major league ready, and Drew Gilbert, right? Or almost major league ready. I won't say major league ready just yet, but almost major league ready. Hopefully by early to mid next season. And Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna to fill those slots and fill those positions. So, and if they don't, then as Robert said in the chat here, shout out Robert, Marte would probably, if he's putting up similar numbers to this season, maybe still even hurt. He's a bench guy, fringe bench guy at most, but we can't be trotting him out as an everyday right fielder if he's going to be given the same effort that he did all this season. I agree. He's been hurt from day one. I don't think he ever recovered, to be honest. And Nelson and I have said that for months regarding Marte. He just did not look right. When you look at him to the naked eye, he just does not look right. So we'll see. I don't think the Mets are really done trading. This offseason is going to be a big indication. Obviously, they're done for the season, but this offseason is going to be a really big indication on not only Mauricio, but these other veteran guys like McNeil and Marte. And I don't know if they want to pull the trigger on those trades in the offseason or wait it out until you see what kind of production you get from those guys beginning of 2024. Because if they really showcase themselves to be, who they once were, McNeil being a batting champion and Marte being, who he's been for quite some time now, you can sell high on them and get a valuable return out if you eat some of that money. So we'll see. I think Steve Cohen has the flexibility going in, and who knows, if you don't trade him, then listen, if McNeil and Marte light it up like they have been doing before, then that's not bad either. So I'll take both options. But I'm just saying, if you're trending more towards youth, then really Marte and McNeil are not going to be part of that equation. So we'll see what the Mets do moving forward. But no, 100% agree with what you and with Nelson and Rob just said about Marte already being injured and playing through that injury. So we'll see what happens. He's what, 35 years old now, almost going to be 36 soon. So it's natural. We got a great year out of Marte in 2022, but everything fell apart. Not only Marte, but everybody else fell apart pretty much in 2023. So it's just been the way the season's gone.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And before we get to Hayden, and you got to remember, guys, Marte did not start spring until the last 2 weeks of spring training. And everybody was wondering what the hell. He had his whole offseason to recover from surgery. We know he had the broken finger. That's why he missed September. And he only had 2 weeks of spring training. And, I don't know. He was probably hurt the whole time and just tried to play through it. And, it sucks. So, Hayden, what do you think about that with Marte? I think we talked about that a ton.
Yeah, I mean, like Nelson and Chris said, I concur with that. I mean, Marte right now has, he looked horrible, no secret. And I still think he's lingering from that groin injury from this offseason when he had the surgery. You could tell he looks just very slow. Defensively, in right field and the outfield, slow on balls. A lot of routine balls that were hit to him, and he kind of just took a slow route and, was costly of a lot of plays. Offensively, he looks horrible to play, completely lost, non-existent, essentially. And you saw it last year. You saw what he's capable of. I mean, he was a guy who hit for a high average, 15, 20 home runs, good speed on the bases, pretty good defense for the most part. He was a big part to the team's success last year, overachieved in certain categories, in my opinion. So when it comes to Marte in the future, like I said, you're not going anywhere for the rest of the season. You're not going to, playoffs are most likely done unless some miracle happens and they go on like a 12-game win streak, but doubt it. Just shut him down. There's no point in running him out there, being a liability offensively, defensively. Why hurt himself more? Just see how it is next season. When they signed him 4 years, wasn't crazy about that. If you actually go back to my video, I do mention that. Wasn't crazy about him being a 4-year, for an aging outfielder. Obviously center field, that's done for him. He's never going to, he never played center field for the Mets, but just to bring up, right field, probably done next year. I don't think he'll play right field next year. I'd put him in left. He has the athleticism, he has the arm, but aging out an aging right fielder, that's not that great to have. But overall, Marte, we'll see. He's a guy who you'd really like to get hot, just experience, veteran, and he offers a lot. And like we saw when he went down in September, late August, that's kind of when the offense really went down. So, he definitely can be a great table setter for this lineup. No doubt he could be a great number 1 or number 2 hitter in this lineup. And, we saw, I don't know if I can say this, but, we saw in the first inning, this team doesn't score a lot in the first inning. Could Marte be a factor in that? Maybe, it's possible. So Marte, don't even play him for the rest of the year. Go into next year and I guess reevaluate him then. See what his future looks like, see where he'll be playing and what his role will be with this team, whether he's starting outfielder, whether he's a bench bat. We'll see. He is a very injury-prone guy, but we'll see.
Yeah, and the Marte thing, they're probably going to shut him down for the rest of the year. It's stupid to bring him back and just hurt him more. You got a financial investment in him still. So, just hope that he comes back 100% healthy at spring and see what you get. So we already went through the trade deadline reactions, I think multiple times through all of our channels and, on collaborations and all that stuff. So we're not going to go too deep into that, but I want to get everybody's opinion on who do you think the best Mets new prospect is and who is going to make the most impact, in your opinion, for this team, if it's next year or whenever it might be, even if you think it's Vargas 4 years down the line. So Nelson, Hayden, let me start with you since you got a kickback with Marte. Who do you think is going to be the best prospect, in your opinion, that is going to actually help this team at the Major League roster in whatever year you think that would go down?
Yeah, I will say, when it comes to this trade deadline, I would say the Mets definitely got, out of all the teams, got a good amount of prospects in return. Now, whether they're going to keep half of those guys and play them, trade them to get other guys, whatever route the Mets take in that, I guess could be a win-win. A couple guys that I liked that were received in return, I would probably say Luis Angel Acuna or Drew Gilbert, I would say are probably two big guys. Obviously Acuna, well known for being Ronald's brother, so that could be a nice little rivalry there, a little New York-Atlanta rivalry. But very advanced guy. He's small sample size in AA Binghamton, but very advanced for someone his age. So I would not be surprised if, heck, he finishes the year in AAA and, we're sitting here in spring training and will he make the roster? That type of conversation. Strong power bat. He's an explosive guy at the plate. He's definitely a guy that you would like to have on any team. Very kind of shocked the Rangers gave him up. I didn't really think he would be a guy that they would give up regardless. So, guy that was very well known in the Rangers farm system. I'm a guy who's obviously very into, prospects in the farm system. And shockingly, he's a guy that wasn't really well talked about. Definitely an underrated prospect. So I would say Luis Angel Acuna. Probably second, I would probably say is Drew Gilbert, another outfielder. Obviously, outfield, like I said, if you can get as many outfield prospects as you can, it's needed. Because, we see the depth. We talk about 2 years ago, 6 months ago, you had no outfield depth. You have no pitching depth in the farm system. You had what? Mike Vassell and Blake Tidwell. And, now you completely stacked your farm system, especially your top 10. So Drew Gilbert's another guy that I think could definitely be an interesting guy. I'd probably say mainly those two candidates. It's going to be exciting, really, to see the Mets farm system continue to grow. Like I said, we've gone over it. Guys like Alvarez, Vientos, Beatty, and soon hopefully Mauricio are all up. And then, you kind of go, a little bit after that prior to this season, and it wasn't really anyone crazy. Matt Allen has been non-existent since he got Tommy John. The Mets drafts, the last two drafts have been very good, so I will applaud Billy Epler to that. But I would say this deadline, I would not be surprised if your farm system is ranked top 3, top 5, top 6 at worst. So yeah, I think it will be a exciting MLB pipeline Mets prospect talk for the next couple months. But yeah, I'd say Luis Angel Acuna is definitely a guy I would watch, and Drew Gilbert.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think the lack of content that we currently have on our channels because the Mets suck is going to be absolutely insane offseason for all of our channels with all the content we're going to be doing constantly with the prospects and trades, free agency, and all that fun stuff. So, Chris, I want to go to you now. What one guy would you say that you're going to say, like, yeah, I think this guy's going to be it and going to help this Mets team whatever year you think that person might come up?
I mean, I think the popular answer is going to be Luis Angel Acuna. I'll let Nelson speak to him. So I'll say Drew Gilbert as my dark horse. I like what Drew Gilbert provides. Um, he was a stud at Tennessee, absolute stud at Tennessee. His defense is probably the most, his bat is his bat, but like I love his defense. If you see all his highlight plays on the defensive side of the ball, he is like a guy that when Nimmo ages, you can just be like, no problem, go to left field. Drew Gilbert, you're next in line, and you'll have a commanding center fielder, almost gold glove caliber center fielder coming up through the system. So I think Drew Gilbert will provide that spark. He plays with passion. Some people could say it's fire. Some people could say sometimes he goes a little bit overboard, like Nelson and I were discussing. So we'll see. Maybe a little bit of an ego check for Drew Gilbert. We'll see how he handles that. But I think he's an explosive prospect. I think a change of scenery could help. He's hitting 364 in his early career already in Binghamton, Double-A Mets. So we'll see what happens there. I think he's 4 for 11. I've already seen a couple highlight plays from him. I know a lot of people are saying Ryan Clifford. I wouldn't sleep on Ryan Clifford either. But just because Ryan Clifford is still, an A in high A ball, I'll defer to Drew Gilbert on this one. Obviously, he was hitting 241 in Double-A for the Houston Astros organization, I think, before he came over. A little bit underwhelming, but maybe this trade gives him a little bit of a spark, gives him a little bit more fire. And because, listen, prospects are probably looking at the major league club and saying, hey, listen, I have a viable shot at being the guy. And, what better place to do it than New York? So I think Drew Gilbert has what it takes, and I think he's going to be my guy that is probably going to be ready. Like I said, for the Marte sort of trade scenario, if he were to do well next season, probably bring him up maybe midway through next season. Worst case scenario, you'll have him at the beginning of 2025 with him already being in Double-A. But we'll see. Like I said, I really want the Mets to start shifting their focus and taking a chance on these Double-A prospects instead of having them move through the pipeline of Triple-A, because Triple-A, man, we already know, it's a shot in the dark. Just because you rake in Triple-A doesn't mean jack squat. So Acuna has great numbers in Double-A right now, or he had great numbers in Double-A for the Texas Ranger organization, batting over 300 with 40 plus stolen bases. So obviously he's going to be the main answer, and that'd be my number one. But I think Drew Gilbert's my close number two. A lot of people, obviously, we're not going to talk about Marco Vargas, and the only reason we're not talking about Marco Vargas right now is because he's still in rookie ball. But I think his upside, his potential, if the Mets stick with him, obviously another middle infield prospect. He's going to have a lot of high upside as well. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. But I will take the already outfield sort of prospects just because the Mets only have really 3 solidified prospects in the outfield as their natural positions. Clifford, Gilbert, and Ramirez going forward. So, yeah, Drew Gilbert's my final answer, and I'll let Nelson go.
All right, Nelson, get it, buddy.
Yeah, so I do a little series on my channel called Talking Farm on the Farm. I literally did a video where I break down every prospect we acquired at the deadline, including I even went back to the Escobar trade. And I like a lot of these kids, but to me, it starts and ends with Luis Angel Acuna. The guy's he just looks like the real deal. He's probably going to be ready sooner than anybody else. He's the most major league ready guy. He's explosive at the plate. He's got excellent speed. He's got like 53 steals already this year. Plays solid defense. Obviously, he's got the pedigree of being Ronald Acuna's brother. That doesn't really mean anything, but still, it's good to know that he has an older brother that is like one of the best players in baseball. So the guy looks phenomenal to me. I think, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where they end up going with playing him. Second base seems like it would be the call there, but they could put him in center as well. Yeah, man, a kid at AA with an 800 OPS and just raking. And I mean, I think he's off to somewhat of a slow start, but he's getting with the Met system, but getting acclimated to a new club and new place and getting traded was probably not expected for him necessarily. So might be a little bit of adjustment in Binghamton, but I love that kid. If I had to pick another one, I actually like Ryan Clifford more than Drew Gilbert. I know some people agree with me. Some people are really high on Gilbert, but Clifford looks like he has a ton of power. I really like what I see out of him. And yeah, I'm gonna be pretty in tune with the prospects. I mean, to be honest, they're more intriguing right now to watch than the Mets. So I'm gonna be watching as much video and as many games as possible. I think I'm gonna make a trip to Binghamton here at the end of the month, hopefully. I might actually shoot to Syracuse as well if I could make that happen. So there'll be some content involving that as well on the channel. So yeah, just to me though, Acuna is the guy, and then Clifford would be my next pick.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you brought up Clifford because that was the guy I was gonna choose because I love Ryan Clifford. I think he's probably gonna have the most power out of any of these prospects. Acuna, I think he'll develop more prospect, but I don't see him as a big power guy with Acuna. I think he can develop into a power guy depending on how he develops. But definitely, I think that he Clifford, the Vanderbilt product, and you got to remember, guys, he was drafted 343 in last year's draft. So this guy already shot up the line through the pipeline of MLB's. He's not in the top 100, but he was in the top 200, and he shot up the Houston Nationals organization rather quickly as well, even though they don't have the greatest farm system. But, I mean, when you're picked at 343, you're not expected to make that major jump rather as quickly as he has. And he's done, and he's shown a lot of skill. I think he has a lot of power. He has a beautiful swing. Go look, just type in Ryan Clifford, and you can see that beautiful swing that he has, left-handed. Beautiful, beautiful swing. And on top of that, he is another guy that I do believe that he's probably going to be projected to be a corner outfielder, which again the Mets need, so that's going to be perfect. And I do think that I haven't really checked out his arm much, but I know that he has a really good glove in the corner outfield. So I do think for the Mets, I think Ryan Clifford. I know he's probably another year away. I would say probably closer to 2025 than 24, unlike Acuna and Gilbert. But I do agree with you guys about Gilbert and Acuna. Those two guys, I think Acuna is probably the most ready, as Nelson said, but Gilbert's right up there. I mean, I would not be shocked if the Mets are going to give every opportunity to Acuna and Gilbert if they keep trending in the right direction. And Chris said it, AA is where it's at, right? AAA, I don't care about the numbers at all. AA is where the numbers are. If these guys are raking in AA, bring them up. The best teams that have the best organization, the best scouts, the best organizational management when it comes to developing these guys, they bring them up from the AA because I think AA is where you get the most confidence because you're playing the best. AAA, I just think that it's just numbers just skyrocket to the point where you think these prospects are better than they are, and it's false hope where I think a lot of Met fans fell into with Vientos and with Beatty in particular, because Alvarez had extremely better numbers in AA than AAA. But yeah, he's performing the best at the major league level than the other two guys who had better AAA numbers. So in that situation, Ryan Clifford, I think, is the guy. He's about probably be ready in 2025. unless he makes an extremely big jump, which I don't think the Mets are going to do with him, because you do have Acuna and Gilbert ready to go most likely. So yeah, I do agree with you guys. Again, we see the guys who are most ready are the guys we're choosing, because that's going to impact the next 2024 and 2025. So good job by you guys with the prospects. And I know everybody's going to have content about the prospects going forward. And yeah, it is pouring at Citi Field. I see bases loaded, nobody out for the Mets with Jonathan Arauz up at the plate, which is interesting because, umpires like to call a rain delay when the Mets have something going. It seemed like that happens a lot this year. So Cohen. Everybody's talking about Steve Cohen. Cohen warned them, and me and Chris, I mean, we had a 2-hour show yesterday, and a lot of it was about Cohen's press conferences, not just the one recently that he had in Kansas City, but the other one in June. He gave fair warning to this organization and to the team and the players. He blamed the players in June, saying the players got to play better. And he also said if they don't play better, the front office has to make a decision. He said that in June. He gave him the entire month of June all the way to the All-Star break, and they didn't turn it around. He said, okay, fine. Right after the All-Star break, you had about 10 to 12 games, about 12 games before the deadline where the Mets could have made some noise and went on a run to change the front office's mind. And I'm going to start with Chris because I think it's important, because we talked about it for so long yesterday. And I think it's important to get your opinion here again for the people who weren't here yesterday. Cohen, exactly what he said he's done, from the farm system to warning these players if things don't turn around, what would happen. So let me give you your thoughts about that, about the Cohen press conferences, the last 2 that he had.
Yeah, I mean, he said it back in June. He said he considers the money that he invested in these players already invested. He cut those losses, right? In he cut those losses pretty much by paying out those contracts, and he basically hinted at it, and he said it indirectly, or I should say he said it directly without saying it directly. But Mets fans shouldn't be surprised. And to be honest with you, what other owner in Major League Baseball is doing what Steve Cohen is doing? We can sit here all day, because I think a lot of people have shifted their focus from blaming the appropriate parties, right, Rob, like we talked about yesterday, to blaming Steve Cohen for this sort of failure of a season. And I get it. I understand when you make a promise of 3 to 5 years of winning the World Series, he's probably the easiest to go after. 100% understand that. But at the end of the day, if you as a front office, as you as an owner, if you as an owner shows commitment, if you show commitment to the fan base, right? This is how I think about it. If you show commitment to cut your losses at a certain point, and accept the fact that you guys aren't going where you originally had thought, and decide to salvage the future because of it, right? The Mets farm system was what? Probably bottom 15 in the league last year in 2022, sorry. In 2023, just 1 year later, they're top 5. What other time does that happen? Does that dramatic of a jump happen? It doesn't happen. It does not happen unless you're willing to eat millions of dollars to essentially buy these higher level prospects that are coming in. So yes, 100%. He said it back in that June impromptu press conference. His most recent press conference, he basically doubled down on what he said before. He said, I'm the owner. Everything that happened at the trade deadline came from me, because at the end of the day, I'm the owner and I signed off on those decisions, right? And he basically kind of just letting you know, like, this is coming from him. And I think until we get a president of baseball operations, we'll see that sort of dynamic start to happen where Steve Cohen's going to take that ownership of these decisions. Maybe when a guy like David Stearns comes in, and we also talked about that too in his June press conference about, his other line of work and his other career job, maybe a little bit less stringent rules in terms of the maybe quote unquote Stearns collusion that might be happening, like we talked about on the Shea Bridge show yesterday. But Yeah, no, I love what he said, and I love what he said both press conferences. And like you said, Rob, time and time again, you'd rather have a front office that commits to their decision. He committed, and Billy Epler both committed to the decision of selling. You can take a look at crosstown indecisive decision of half buying, which is basically what the Mets did last season, although they really had to because they were in a position to win now. Also didn't have the farm system to support being buyers pretty much. But you can take a look at what's happening with the Yankees right now. Not great news what's happening out of the Bronx. So, no, I 100% agree. At the end of the day, Steve Cohen's going to take accountability as well. He's going to show face. He's not going to hide his face. He may not be as active as he was on Twitter. Obviously, he's catching the heat, but come on now. Like, he's doing everything he can. So to blame Steve Cohen is a little bit ridiculous. Maybe a little bit of kind of a learning lesson, maybe for new owners. Don't make any sort of short-term promises. Even if you are the richest owner in the major leagues, that's always going to rub any fan base, especially New York fan base, the wrong way. But yeah, he was very transparent, like you said on the screen right here. Cohen warned everybody what was happening. The Mets had a trial run after the All-Star break to prove to the front office that they had what it took to compete for a World Series this year. And guess what? It did not happen. And do you really blame if you're sitting here as a Mets fan and blaming the front office for trading away Scherzer? Verlander's one thing, but the Scherzer trade, I don't know what to tell you. If you're not a fan of that trade, I just don't know what to tell you at this point. So yeah, I agree. Steve Cohen, Billy Epler, that's a great job. That's like grade level A category of salvaging your future based off of a dud season with World Series expectations. It's not going to be pretty online. Everyone's going to call the Mets failures, as they should, because it was a failed season. But cutting losses to make your team better for the short run moving forward in whether that be 2024, 2025, what more do you want? So that's how I look at it. You're on mute again, Rob.
I don't know. I'm pressing mute now. I don't know what the hell I'm doing to myself. All right. So yeah, exactly. I agree, Chris, 100% about that. Like, I think if a Met fan didn't like the Scherzer trade, I think they want to live in misery so they can complain. You know, like Frank Hank. That guy, the Mets can win the World Series, he'll complain. I can't stand that guy. He is the worst.
Frank's a legend, though. Come on.
He is, but he's a spokesperson for negativity. Last year he was complaining. If you go back to May of last year, he was complaining about the Mets. Why? There was no need to. Every time he's just a complainer again, and I truly believe this. I think if he was a normal guy that looks like the rest of us, that is a calm guy, talking sports, he wouldn't be as famous as he is. To be honest with you, because we all got those crazy takes and those emotional craziness going on when things don't go our way. But I mean, he wasn't the only one on that train when he was late that time for opening day, right? He wasn't the only one. Everybody made it about him because he was vocal about it. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to say that.
It's for the clicks. We all know it's for the clicks. We all know it's for the clicks.
Of course. I met Tank a couple of times at Citi Field. He's a nice guy in person, personally. But again, he puts on a show, and we all know it. Hayden, I know you've been very vocal about Cohen. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not. I would say you have to agree, but Cohen did warn the players. He gave them that opportunity to prove them wrong. He did it. They didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Cohen has definitely been an interesting face of the Mets this season. Obviously, I feel his attitude also has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Obviously, like we all discussed, a new owner, a little ambitious when he took over. Obviously, giving a timeline to win a World Series was pretty dumb, in my opinion. And then also going out and, when you say, oh, it's hard to find a president of ops, but then you give it. Yeah. So, Cohen definitely learned, obviously, whether it's not being as vocal on Twitter to just a ton of stuff. So, yeah, I know Cohen's been an interesting character for me, but putting that aside, when it comes to Steve Cohen, he warned the players. back to that press conference in June when the team was playing bad for about a month and a half. He said, listen, play better or else, we'll go on to next year. He warned the players. He gave them an ample amount of opportunity. He gave them from June till pretty much July 31st, August 1st. And then obviously he had that press conference in Kansas City. And, I agree. I was satisfied with what he said in Kansas City. I thought he was very honest, transparent, and is another word to use. I thought he pretty much said everything that needed to have been said. Obviously, when it comes down to this season, it's been unfortunate. It's been a disaster, failure, whatever term you want to use. This team had high expectations and they pretty much, wet the bed essentially. And right now he handles the rest of the season in the off season. When it comes to the trade deadline, I agree with the Scherzer trade. I think that was great. I mean, I said Scherzer was washed and completely out of it since probably this whole season, arguably. I've been saying it. So, Verlander, that's one thing. But the Scherzer trade, I was satisfied with it. Really, all the trades. My only really major complaint with the trade deadline was you didn't get crazy returns for pitching. But, like I said, I'm not going to come out here and complain about every single thing. So, trade deadline, like I said, at least Cohen and Epler got prospects in return. Good prospects, I may say, very valuable guys that will have a huge impact for this Mets farm system and for this Mets team next year to 2027, 2028. So massive props there to Steve Cohen and Billy Epler in this front office. I'd like to see the president of baseball operations thing carry out, David Stearns. That's going to be very relevant in the next couple weeks to months. And I guess just briefly touching on it, when it comes down to Steve Cohen. And, I just want to say this. Everyone's saying that the Mets are not going to be relevant next year and arguably 2025. There's a difference between spending and being aggressive versus being competitive and signing just anybody. The Mets pretty much, and Steve Cohen and Billy Epler said they are not going to go out and sign guys for a $40 million AAV contract, right? So whether that's some extremely high Cy Young pitcher, an MVP bat, whatever, the Mets are not going to go out and spend $300 million this offseason, right? That's been established. Doesn't mean they can't compete. They could still go out there and sign free agents at a lesser value. They can still go out there and make trades. Like I said, that's a big reason to why you got this farm system where it could be. You look at this team now, it's a competitive team. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso,
You think
McNeil.
not to cut you off? You think Ohtani? You think the Mets don't make an offer for Ohtani? Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I just want to ask.
What's the question?
You don't think the Mets make an offer, at least an offer sheet to Ohtani?
It doesn't hurt. Yeah. I would like them to sign Ohtani, but I guess that's kind of the question is when they said they're not going to spend, well, what does that mean about Ohtani? And that's the one thing they never really mentioned. Could Ohtani be the one piece? And then that's kind of it. We'll see. But the Mets, like I said, they can go out and sign free agents at a lesser value, short-term deals, average players, no one too crazy, but this is the team that can still compete. I mean, this is a lineup that can still compete. Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil. You look at the baby Mets, Alvarez. Alvarez is playing like he's been in the league for 5 years. We'll see the development of Beatty, Vientos, and all the other guys. Hopefully that'll be another year under their belt. Pitching is obviously where it's, it needs to be more taken seriously. And like I said, Cohen talks all he wants, but it's going to come down to the offseason. And if they're going to go out there and not sign any pitching, and, they're going to go in with a rotation of David Peterson, Tyler McGill, and Kodai Senga, and Joe Schmo, and John Doe, well, it's going to be a rough year.
Yeah.
So just to kind of rephrase, the Mets are still going – I'd imagine they're going to sign free agents in the offseason, just guys at lesser value. They're not going to spend a ton of money. They can compete. They are going to compete next year. And like I said, expectations for this team is probably the worst thing that they could have. I mean, in 2020, 2021, this year, I mean, the only time they had expectations and achieved was last year. So maybe this team not having the expectations is actually a good thing. You look at a team like the Marlins, the Reds, the Orioles. I know a couple of those teams have been rough lately, but to the point to bring up. So, like I said, this is a team that will still be competitive. They're just not going to spend as much. And I mean, ask the Baltimore Orioles and Tampa Bay Rays about that. I'm sure they'll tell you all about that. So we'll see how it goes. when it comes down to Steve Cohen, there's going to be a lot of other things. He could say whatever he wants. He could, go through the motions, this front office. But, it's going to be a busy offseason. I mean, if you thought this is going to be one of the biggest off seasons for Cohen's young ownership and Epler stays around and all the other front office, whether it's guys like Pete Alonso, whether it's guys like bringing in free agents, whether it's Ohtani. So we'll see. But yeah, the Ohtani question is interesting, Chris, because, they said they weren't going to spend. Well, what does that mean with Ohtani? So I really don't know. We'll see.
Listen, I don't think Cohen ever came out and said that they're not going to spend. He said that they're not going to be as star-studded. I mean, look at the free agent list for this offseason. It's not star-studded beside Ohtani. So, this year, he made the Verlander signing that was star-studded, but if he makes look, there's going to be about $140-something million coming off the books. He signs Ohtani to a $60 million contract per AAV for whatever amount of years. You're going to still have about 70 to 80 million to still spread around. So that doesn't mean he's not going to make an offer to Ohtani, and Nelson, we'll get to you in a second about the Cohen situation. Yeah, I think that he's going to spend money. I just feel like he's not going to just go out, because he basically went after basically every free agent the Mets were in on, according to the media, right? Last offseason. It seemed like they were always in on somebody. It was the Correa situation that popped out of nowhere. But when the Mets are not rumored to be in on a player, they usually are in on that player very, very much, right? The Lindor trade, nobody had any idea until it happened. The Canna, we talked about this, Hayden. Canna, Marte, and Escobar signing was at 8:00 at night. Nobody had any idea they were even in on those guys. The same thing with Scherzer. Scherzer wasn't even thought about. Andy Martino came on SNY the day before the Mets signed Scherzer and says the Mets are not going after Scherzer. And then the same thing with Verlander. Even though there was a lot of talk about Verlander, it wasn't still a guarantee because everybody thought they were going to sign DeGrom until they didn't. And then Verlander was like 2 days later. So every time you don't hear a rumor about the Mets being in and on a player, I think they are a lot more than people think, in my opinion. So, Nelson, Cohen's warning to them. And what did you think about the Cohen conversation? And do you think that he actually was 100% truthful with his players, at least in those press conference, at least in the June press conference?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Cohen has been a man of his word pretty much since he got in here. Everybody likes to pinpoint the 3 to 5 year thing. He even says pretty much he regrets saying that. I don't know what more you want from the guy. If you lived through the Wilpon era, I mean, it doesn't get a lot worse than the Wilpons, especially in a big market like New York. This is a guy that, I mean, the fact that he's even doing these press conferences, it's unheard of. Like, owners don't do that, especially owners in baseball. These guys are all hiding. I live an hour and a half out of Pittsburgh and an hour and a half out of Cleveland. Both of their owners are horrible. Cleveland has had a little more success than the Pirates, but Bob Nutting is the Pirates owner. I don't think I've ever seen that man speak publicly. Like, he hides, and he doesn't spend money on his team, and he takes no accountability, and he would never send a letter to season ticket holders apologizing and letting you know what the deal is going forward. Like, it's not what owners do. So I respect Cohen for doing what he does. If the players didn't believe him, if the media and the fans didn't want to believe him, that's on you. Like, he laid out what he was going to do. If the team wasn't competing, he was going to sell off, and he was going to try to build this farm system. It's always been his goal.
Yep.
And he basically bought a brand new farm system in a matter of days. No owner does that. They don't go out and buy prospects like that. And I'm sure there'll be some cockamamie rule made that you can't do certain things because they love picking on Cohen. So don't be surprised if the next collective bargaining agreement there's some stipulation to how you can trade for prospects and this and that and the other. But he's playing within the rules that you give him, and right now the rules are what they are. We might be able to get a top 6 pick where we wouldn't and otherwise fell 10 spots back. Plus, we build up the farm system. I mean, you can't, given where we were going, you can't ask for much more than that. It's not like we traded young guys. We traded 3 almost 40-year-old guys.
Yeah.
And then the other guys that we traded weren't long-term solutions anyway. Pham wasn't going to be here long-term. Cano wasn't going to be here long-term. Leon, the fact that we even got anybody for Leon is a miracle.
At that.
Yeah, and an actual ranked prospect. So for as much as people get on, not to make this about Epler, but much as people get it on Epler, he did a solid job with what. I mean, yeah, he was using Steve's money to do it, but he did a solid job for what the assignment was. And as far as expectations for next year, man, I think Cohen's doing the right thing. I think he's lowering the expectations a little bit. I think that's a calculated move. Steve is a smart man. Steve knows what he's doing. He chooses his words very carefully. He doesn't go out there and just say things off the cuff.
Yep.
He said he was going to be opportunistic. That could mean a number of things. Opportunistic can mean, hey, Shohei's kind of not committed to a certain spot. I'm going to jump in and offer him a contract. Opportunistic can mean, listen, I got 500 shortstop prospects. Let me trade some of them for a starting pitcher, whoever may be available. So it may not even be, we might not spend a lot on free agents. We might just go to trade route and bring in a few guys via trade. He's got his options open. And the other thing is, we don't have a president of baseball operations. I know we want to assume Stearns will be here. Hopefully he will be. I'm not going to bank on that until I see it officially happen, because things change in baseball all the time. But whoever the president is, they may have a plan that Steve wasn't even thinking about. And he may come in and say, listen, this is what I want to do. I want Shohei. I want this guy. I want this other guy. I want Urias. Yep. And I don't think Cohen's going to look at him and be like, nah, I hired you, but we're not going to do that. So things can change. I wouldn't read too much into the whole we're not going to be, or the expectations comment, and we're not going to sign up. We don't. Listen, he doesn't know. And honestly, I do really think he wanted Scherzer out of here. He was going to tell him what he needed to tell him to get him out of here. I truly believe that. And at that point with Verlander probably saw the writing on the wall and said, man, I want out too. And they let him go back to Houston. That's his home. Good for him. I don't know, man. If he had traded like Pete, I mean, granted, I guess there were rumors that he was out on the block, but traded Pete, traded some younger guys, and I could see this being like a total teardown. But he didn't. I still believe in the guy. Listen, after years, I'm 36 years old. After years of living through the Wilpons, I'm gonna give this guy some slack for a little while. To me, he's earned it. And yeah, I'm not writing off next year. It may not be that we're looking to battle for the division. If we're just in a wild card hunt, I'm fine with that. But we'll see what happens. I really hope that we can get Stearns in here, because I think he's a good baseball mind. He did a lot of good things in Milwaukee. I think he can lead us down the right path. So, yeah, that's my take.
You know what would be epic? It would be epic if the Mets knew exactly the fact that Scherzer had a big mouth and told him what he wanted to hear to get him out of here, and just watch the writing on the wall happen with Scherzer trying to expose the Mets in terms of their future plans. And they're like, this is awesome. The league knows about it now. Let's go sign every free agent there is in 2024, and let's go win a World Series.
Well, and I think the interesting thing with Scherzer is Scherzer and Verlander had two different opposite responses to the Mets organization.
Yep.
I mean, you saw Verlander, and I couldn't tell you quote for quote, but he said it's a great organization, very successful coming in the future. They're going to be great down the line, whatever. And then you see Scherzer, and he's like a child, throwing them under the bus. So yeah, completely two different opposite approaches. I mean, Verlander, he's a veteran, Hall of Famer, knows what he's doing, won World Series, multiple. He has a great future. Obviously, I think he's much more successful than Scherzer. Obviously, Scherzer is plenty successful. He'll likely be a Hall of Famer too. But in my opinion, Scherzer's a little weak. I feel like this year, just with the whole Sweat and Rosin incident and just the lack accountability, in my opinion, yeah, I don't know. So I just figured, like I said, you look at the two opposite responses. So
Yep.
I agree. I feel like they, not to like go off topic, but I agree. They kind of, in my opinion, I think they kind of told Scherzer that because, like you said, he has a big mouth, and they kind of just wanna. I think they kind of just told him not to get him out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, when it comes to Scherzer in general, he never wanted to be here. If you go back to the offseason before the Mets signed him, there was reports, there was Boris talking about he didn't want to come to the East Coast, in particular New York. He said that, and that was from Boris. So he didn't want to be here. Again, the Mets overpaid to bring Scherzer here, obviously. That was an obvious point because all indications were he was going to the Dodgers because they were offering him a 2-year deal, and the Mets came back with the third year to sign him. Remember, Scherzer said in that interview with Boris next to him that Cohen got him into the room and said, how are we going to work this out? So he was going to the Dodgers until Cohen stepped in the room and says, how are we going to get this done? So Scherzer never wanted to be here. So him opening up his big-ass mouth, and he's a union guy on top of that, he was going to look to make him as the brighter picture in this whole spectrum of shit that the Mets are in. So
Rob, let me address. MEZ said, "What did Stearns do in Milwaukee exactly?" I want to just point that out because I agree with what Amish said here, what Nelson said. The Brewers have had first time in their franchise's history made the playoffs 4 years in a row, and we all know that it's easy to judge any sort of exec in a small market on a small market team. You give an executive, a president of baseball operations, the resources they need, not only the money that Steve Cohen now possesses, right? That he possesses under Steve Cohen, but the prospects that Steve Cohen literally brought in for him to use and trade away as he pleases. That is a recipe for success. And I don't buy into the stock of David Stearns not doing anything in Milwaukee, quote unquote, just because he didn't win a World Series there. I don't know if that's a point against him. So I just want to bring that comment up because I just don't see that as a plausible cause of not hiring the guy. Now, if you want to say, okay, listen, David Stearns is not the end all be all. He's not going to be the savior of this franchise. Okay, I can buy that. But let's not knock the guy before he gets in here and works his magic as to what he has as resources over what he's had in Milwaukee. That's just my only point on that. And it's just reading the conversation.
Absolutely. And easy. You just brought up Brian Sabean as well. Do you know how much money Brian Sabean spent for the Giants all those years? He spent a ton of money all those years and didn't win nothing until they actually did the 3 out of the 5 years. I don't even think Sabean was actually a big part of that. I know he was still a part of the organization. I don't know if he was still the GM at that time, but I think he was. But he spent a ton of money on those teams to win World Series as well. So Brian Sabean, yeah, I mean, he's with the Yankees now under Brian Cashman. I mean, if Brian Sabean's so good, why isn't he telling Brian Cashman to make actually better decisions than Brian Cashman is actually making? Cashman is still making the same stupid decisions. Why bring in Brian Sabean if you're not going to listen to him? Because I think Brian Sabean is better than Brian Cashman when it comes to allocating money in the right direction and actually making better decisions for a franchise who was spending like a drunken sailor for many years in the Giants system as well when he was there. He won. But easy. Yeah, he won 3 championships. But Brian Cashman won as well. Do you give him credit? I mean, come on. Like Brian Sabian, yes, he's very good. But again, he spent a ton of money. And again, Stearns never had that opportunity to spend the money he wanted. Imagine him developing a farm system, making the right trades at the right time, and made the playoffs 4 years in a row, never in their history, and now actually going to have the money and the brains to actually do both. Again, it might not work out. And like Chris said, who the hell knows? He might be bad at it. But, I mean, these guys get recycled all the time. So, sometimes you just have to hit lightning in a bottle. And, if Billy Epler would have signed a guy that would have been great, are you going to call Billy Epler a great GM? Because what if the Mets would have won the World Series last year with the decisions that Epler made at the deadline? Are you going to say Billy Epler is a great GM because the Mets won a World Series? Or was it something else, right? So you can say Sabian's a great – you know what? Theo Epstein broke 2 curses. So Theo Epstein is a guy that I could say, okay, that guy figured things out. He went to 2 franchises that are 100-plus years old and won World Series for them, and in Boston, multiple. So Sabian's a good GM. I'm not going to kill that aspect of it. But, again, he's with the Yankees right now, and Cashman's doing the same bullshit as he always done. So, if Sabian's so good, why hasn't he got hired by another organization to run another organization as a GM? You know why? Because he's probably a little bit outdated at this point now. That's probably the reason why. He's probably too long in the tooth now to actually be a GM of another organization now. I'm not questioning Sabian. You're questioning the fact that Stearns is not – you're saying why is Stearns not a GM? A good GM. I mean, he is. He has no money in Milwaukee and still is becoming a playoff team almost every year for the last couple of years. And Nelson brought up that point. So, it's not about killing Sabian. It says that you're killing Stearns for no reason when he's done a really good job. Let me see Sabian with that type of payroll, and let me see how good he is. Because Sabian actually bought a lot of players as well. So let's not act like he didn't have the money to fix his mistakes when he made those mistakes. Stearns didn't have those mistakes in Milwaukee. He makes a mistake salary-wise, he's screwed for probably 2-3 years. But you're talking about a manager over a GM. That's just a stupid comment. Easy. Sorry. All right. So Alonso extension. Hayden, I'm going to start with you because that's your boy. Alonso extension. Again, we know the comments from Pete Alonso. Wasn't very happy with the organization. Well, easy. What have you done? I mean, a Mets fan in the Bronx. You clearly have problems. All right, Hayden, go ahead.
Yeah, Pete Alonso. Yeah, obviously, Pete Alonso has been trending on news and Twitter lately. Obviously, this past week, he was brought up quite a lot. I don't really think it's much to question. You better extend him. You better extend him. Obviously, he hits the free agent market 2025. So, you could either extend him this year and have the comfort next year, or you could let him go to the market, and it's going to be much more complex when it comes to retaining him back. Obviously, you're going to have to pay him more if he hits the market rather than doing it now. There's not many guys that come around that are homegrown talents and automatically make history year one. Alonso, since 2019, I mean, by far one of my favorite players and a great player in Major League Baseball. I mean, as of right now, he is crushing every offensive stat for the Mets. I wouldn't be surprised if he's here for another 10 years if he's the leader in half of the stats.
Yeah.
Like I said, if he walks or you trade him, you may as well just, you may as well honestly just tear everything down at that point because, what are you doing then? So, yeah, like I said, Pete Alonso, great player, great clubhouse presence. When it comes to an extension, yeah, obviously Alonso, I mean, you looked at a couple. I mean, you could look at the Freddie Freeman one. Don't quote me on it. I want to say that was 6 years, 160-something. You look at Matt Olson's, I want to say that was about 8 years. around the same number. So realistically, yeah, I don't think Alonso is going to get this pool host 10 years, 200 million plus. I don't think they'll go with that. You have to take a look at Pete Alonso. He is 28 years old, 29 coming December. Ideally, if I'm the GM, I would probably give Alonso anywhere from, I'd probably give him something like a Freddie Freeman type, a 6-7 years, 170 to kind of around 180, 190 approximately.
So that's around the closer to between 25 and 30 million.
Yeah, probably a little bit, maybe closer to the 20 to 23 million AAV. Like I said, that's probably roughly what I'd imagine. I don't think they'd give him anywhere near like a pool host type deal. Probably more closer to an Olsen, Freddie Freeman there, 3, 4, 5 years within that age range. But yeah, you better extend Pete Alonso this offseason. I'm sorry, but if you don't extend Pete Alonso this offseason, that's sad. I think that'd be beyond sad. And if he walks or you trade him, tear down the franchise at that point. I don't see what's the point of trading a guy who is probably going to break every single offensive stat on this team. Power hitters don't come that easy. They don't grow on trees. And you don't see many guys come for the Mets and have a historic killer rookie season. I mean, he is a franchise player. I mean, you talk about captain. I think Pete Alonso is in that conversation. So, if you don't bring back Pete Alonso, lol Mets. I mean, I think I would be livid, and I think many fans would be. I think lol Mets, lol Cullen is what the trend would probably be if you don't bring back Pete. You have to extend him this offseason. Don't let him go to free agency in 2025. I don't want to deal with that. I don't know if they'd extend him during the season. I don't think that'd be the Mets' style to extend him during the season. I think they'd rather do everything during the offseason. When it comes to Alonso, when it comes to it right now, we don't really know much about Alonso and Alonso extension. We know he likes New York. He's been very successful here. He likes New York. He likes the vibes. He likes the team. He likes the atmosphere. It's not like he doesn't like it here or whatever reasoning. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't want to stay. Polar Bear Pete, like I said, I'm thinking anywhere from 6 to 7 years, like a 170, 175 million, I think would be somewhat appropriate. And do it. I mean, that should be the first thing that you do in December, in November. The off season comes, I'm extending him heartbeat, and if it doesn't get done, shame on the Mets.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see because what is he making, like $17-18 million now or something like that?
And he is the highest first base this past off season. He was the highest first baseman for arbitration. Yeah. So, exactly. So I mean, that's something there.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to take a $3 million extra per AAV. It's probably going to be closer to 30. Nelson, I know you got to run, so let me get your final thoughts on Pete.
Listen, my first choice would be to keep Pete, but I'm a little weary of giving him more than 6 years. I really wouldn't want to give him 30 million. I mean, I guess if that's what it takes, it's whatever. I'm not necessarily worried about the money. It's Cohen. He's got tons of it, but I don't know. I just some of the things I've seen with Pete this year worry me. I don't know if it'll be a long-term issue with him or if it's just a down year. I mean, obviously the injury hurts, but he was playing not very well before the injury. I'm just a little hesitant to give him a ton of money and a ton of years. But I also know that the fan base will lose their minds if he goes anywhere. And I don't want to hear it. I'm sick enough of some of the crap that is all over Twitter about various players on this team. I don't want to hear the Alonso garbage. So if they sign him, great. But I'm not necessarily on the whole, like, if you get rid of him, everything's over. And I mean, if you find the right trade, it would. I mean, it would hurt, but if you get the right pieces in return, you sign the right guys. It's not like it's a move that would kill the franchise. It would be demoralizing to some. I get that, but I don't think it's like the end of the world. But at the end of the day, it's just sign them just because I don't want to hear it. that's the honest truth. I just sign them because I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I agree. Chris, give me your thoughts on the Alonso extension. If you want that to happen, and give me a year and a number.
Yeah, I wanted it to happen. I think it should happen. I think this season's a fluke. Obviously, the power numbers are always going to be there. Average has been there outside of this year. I think you sign him. I think he's not gonna want anything less than 7, 8 years. So talk about 6 years is not gonna be an option for him. If you're signing him to a long-term deal. I get where people are hesitant on it. I 100% understand that. If I had to sort of guesstimate a number in a year for you, I'd say 210 over 8 years. That's around just over $26 million a year. He's not going to take less than Matt Olson. Matt Olson's on the team friendly deal anyways for what he provides for them. He's like at like $23 million AAV. That's not what Alonso's going to take. Goldschmidt's at 27, Freeman's at 28. Alonso's not going to 23. He's going to be 25 plus. You give him 210, 8 years. He shuts up. He takes it, and he's a Met for the foreseeable future. You build around that core with Pete, Nimmo, Alvarez, and you bring in whoever Cohen and Epler and David Stearns hopefully needs to bring in, and you make it happen. That is what it is. It'd be a very bad look if the Mets start to penny pinch, right, with the Pete Alonso contract. They've been so adamant about getting all these guys for $40+ million, right? Even you saw it with Lindor's contract. Lindor's contract was a different situation. I understand that. But they gave him $331 million or whatever it was after the Fernando Tatis deal. Starting to penny pinch over Pete Alonso would be a bad look, in my opinion, just from an outsider's perspective over the whole situation. So I think you give him what he wants. Obviously, he's not going to get 30 million AAV. I don't think that's feasible. I don't think he's going to be the highest paid first baseman in the league. He's not better than Freddie Freeman, who's at that 28 million AAV mark, although his contract is 6 years with the Dodgers. I don't that Goldschmidt's another comparison you can talk about. I don't know where he ranks, but 210, maybe 215 over 8 is a fair comparison. So you're talking about 26 and a quarter to $27 million a year for Pete. I think it's fair. Hopefully, if you get it done this offseason, I mean, I don't know if they will or not, but it would be a really, really funny situation if they did because he's coming off this season. So I don't think that they would probably negotiate with him during the season. So it's kind of a tough situation because Alonso just had the season that he had. Maybe the Mets front office uses that as a negotiation tactic to shoot him down to maybe 24, 25. That's plausible and it could happen. Yeah. But, Pete Alonso's sitting here worrying now, probably. I'm not going to speculate, but, he was thought of getting this extension as a surefire thing. Now they set him at a very high price at the trade deadline. He starting to worry, like, hey, listen, is this going to happen with the Mets or not? And I don't know. I don't know how aggressive Pete Alonso's agents are going to be. I don't know what he's telling them either. But I think $26 million is a fair play for Pete Alonso. So I'd look for 20, just off the top of my brain, 210 for 8 is what I'd say. Because he's not like, this is going to be his probably one and only long-term deal. Unless he decides to hit free agency, he's going to want 8 years. So you're not going to talk about
if he turns that down, though, don't you kind of have to walk away?
Yeah.
If he turns down 210 for 8, you have to walk away because I don't know if making him the highest paid first baseman is conducive to producing the best overall team that you can. You plug and play elsewhere. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be making him, I'm not sure if $29 to $30 million AAV is going to do it. If anybody resets the first baseman market, I think it's probably going to be Vlad Guerrero Jr. and not Pete Alonso. So I think that given what Matt Olson, I think that the Mets can leverage that as well. Matt Olson is making $23 million a year for the Braves. Obviously, you can have it as a sign of respect to Pete. We'll give you 25, 26, but we're not making you the highest paid first baseman in the league. And that's it. And I think that's how the Mets go about their extension talks with Pete Alonso. But I
Yeah.
want to see him here long term. That's what I'll say.
I agree. And, Nelson put up a good point, though. Yeah, I think you have to walk away because the fact of the matter is, listen, you're still under team control for an extra year, right? If things don't work out in the offseason and the Mets don't have a good season in the first couple of months, all the talk's going to be trading Pete Alonso at the deadline. That's all you're going to hear. And I think there has to be a give and take on both sides. I think Pete Alonso has to realize there's not 9 other teams bidding for him. It's only the Mets offering him a deal right now. And I think, at some point, Pete has to realize that you have to get somewhat of a team-friendly deal. You can't, Pete Alonso has to look in his same division, right? Teams like the Braves, they traded for Olson. I know Olson's from Georgia, so it's a different story. But you know what? Murphy also was traded from Oakland, and they also, all these guys took team-friendly deals. And I'm not saying, take extreme less money. But you know what? If you're looking for 30 and the Mets don't want to give you more than 27, you're really going to bitch and moan about $3 million? If you're going to do that to the Mets, you know what? Good riddance. You know what? We'll find a first baseman. You know what? Honestly, I know the production's hard to replicate, but you know what? For that $30 million you're going to give Pete Alonso, I could split that in half and find me a first baseman that hits me 20 home runs, and that's 290. And 60, 70 RBIs, and find me another guy for another $15 million that can give me 15 home runs. And look, there's your difference right there in production from 2 different players. And I know that's not going to be a popular decision, but Pete Alonso also has to understand too, if you want Steve Cohen to make certain deals and you're complaining about this deadline to the point where he actually spent $130 million to buy prospects, you got to save a little bit of money considering the fact that the Mets are trying to actually win. If you're going to talk about 25 and 26, you don't think he's going to go after Juan Soto. You don't think he's going to go after other guys as well. So, you have to think about that as well. Think about yourself, obviously. But if you're going to turn down $26, $27 million because you want $30, $31 million, you want to be the highest paid first baseman, Matt Olson at the moment is better than you right now. He has better numbers right now, and he's way better defensively. Vladimir Guerrero is younger and is going to probably be projected as better. I don't know if he's better defensively as Pete Alonso, but he probably is around the same area of defensively, but he's a better all-around hitter than Pete Alonso. So, you have to look at it that way as well, because as soon as Pete Alonso is considered the highest paid player, 2 other guys are, Vladimir Guerrero is going to get more. So I think if he doesn't take that $26, $27 million, the Mets really have to take a second look and might have to think about it, to be honest with you.
See, that's why I think he does take the 26 if you give him the 8 years, because he's like, what sense would it make for him to turn that down and go somewhere else for that extra couple million when that's probably not guaranteed? You give him the 26 over 8 as opposed to 6 years, and he's probably not going to complain as much, because that $3 million difference over those 2 years is not going to equate to what you make in those extra 2 years of the contract. So
I think he wants a longer deal. I think he wants more years, and the money can be a little bit less. I think he wants the years more than probably being the highest paid player.
And that's what I was just about to say. When it comes to the long term, that's what I was thinking. I understand Alonso's extension talks have been a little bit more private and closed doors. They weren't as discussed as I guess Nimmo potentially re-signing and Francisco Lindor's extension back in 2021. But I really can't imagine Alonso pinching over $3 million for someone in his case. If that's the case, then that's just one. We discussed the homegrown discount. He's a homegrown player. Success, you take.
You're okay? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something else. All right. So, we're going to finish it up, guys. So, Nelson, tell everybody what you're going to be doing with your channel and say your goodbyes.
Yeah, appreciate you. Great show as always. Like what we got going here, with pretty consistent crew here. So look forward to doing more of these. Yeah, on the channel, like Chris said earlier, we got the Interstate Mets report that we do on Tuesdays and Fridays. We do that 5 o'clock Tuesdays, 4 o'clock Fridays. Other than that, I'll be doing a lot more prospect stuff. I do, like I said earlier, I do that Talking Farm on the Farm series where I discuss Mets prospects. I usually try to keep it to like more unknown guys. Is there guys, certain guys everybody's heard of, but I mix it up, and then I just do random content here and there. As the name says, I am the Amish country Mets fan, so I am in Amish country. I do take advantage and have the farm life in my videos. So if you like the farm and the backdrop of that's always something different to see. I got like 4 or 5 pigs back there that I do videos, and they jump in sometimes. So yeah, check the channel out if you haven't. Please subscribe to Amish Country Mets Fan. I'll keep doing content no matter how bad and lousy this team is. I'm still gonna be here doing whatever, whether it be shorts or long form videos or live streams. We'll figure it out. But I appreciate you, Rob, for having me on this show, and appreciate the rest of you guys. Hayden, obviously Chris. I mean, we've been doing stuff together for a while. So yeah, man. Everybody, thanks for watching. Everybody. Hopefully, I don't know if this game's gonna come back on or what, but hopefully the Mets finish it off and win. And have a great night.
All right, excellent, Nelson. Chris, what's up, buddy?
CP from CPNY Sports. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Like Nelson said, Tuesdays and Fridays on the Interstate, I do everything. I'm talking Giants. Giants season's coming up. Knicks, if you're a Knicks fan for basketball season, I'm gonna be doing some Rangers content as well. Hayden's got you with the Islanders content. I got you guys with the Rangers content. Big Rangers, Knicks, Giants, Mets fan. I know I'm a little bit of a weirdo, mixing and matching my sports fanhoods, but that's how I grew up. That's how it's gonna be. If you're a fan of any of those teams, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've been commenting here in the comment section. Navigate over to my page, hit that subscribe button. Almost to 100 subscribers. Hopefully, get there pretty shortly. Nice little milestone there. Appreciate all the work that we've been doing here. Across not only what Nelson and I are doing, but everything that we're doing with Hayden and Rob. Definitely appreciate you guys. Love talking Mets baseball with you all, especially during these trying times. It's something to look forward to now, doing these sorts of podcasts, lives, etc. Just giving back to the people who are also probably just struggling to watch this team on a day-to-day basis, and giving them some content to kind of think about, whether it's prospects, whether it's exec level sort of decisions the Mets have to make in the offseason, potential trades to look at. It's going to be a fun offseason, so let's weather these next 2 months as best as we can. We'll still be here in the meantime to provide you guys content, and we'll hit you guys full force in the offseason to cover the offseason moves. So appreciate it, Rob, Hayden, Nelson. Always great with you guys. And until next time, guys.
All right, excellent. Chris, Hayden, what you got?
Yeah, Mets Talk with Hayden. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll probably do a stream at some point this week. Just been taking care of a couple things, and really not much to talk about the Mets this past week. Anything good, at least. So yeah, definitely probably do a stream later this week. Yeah, Mets Talk with Hayden. Obviously, live streams, recaps, predictions, all of that great stuff. Videos, analysis, farm system. Hear it from me straight, pretty much. Give my honest opinions. So yeah, otherwise, like I said, I know, it's been a massive L, very disappointing season. I know, like I said, the dog days of the season are about here. If you're a fan of a team that's not doing well, you're about waiting for football or hockey or whatever other sport I guess you could follow in that case. So we'll have to see how it goes. Obviously, I will be starting a lot of Buffalo Bills content, probably a channel, probably in the next couple weeks. Kind of have to plan that out, see how it's gonna go with my classes. I report back to school. August 20th. So, as you guys like to call it, DeGrom University, I will be back there. So, yeah, we'll see how that have to goes. Obviously, probably I'd much rather do that than watch the Mets play miserable baseball. But yeah, definitely really glad that we have this little the Mets Roundtable podcast. Obviously, it's great working with Nelson, Chris, and Rob. Definitely like the 4 guys we got going on here. And good times will come soon, as I like to say. But that's all I got. Like, comment, subscribe, LFGM. And yeah, let's get it.
Absolutely. So don't forget, guys, subscribe to all their channels. They always do great work. They're knowledgeable, obviously. They're diehards, so that's the most important thing there. So with that said, guys, everybody, thank you for tuning into another Mets Roundtable podcast. As always, Mets fans, let's go Mets. We will see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Let's go Mets.
Give them a hand and let them know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kids.